The death toll in the Pretoria aircraft crash has risen to 2. The crash occurred near Vonderboom Airport, north of Pretoria, on Tuesday. The South African Civil Aviation Authority says 19 people were on board. The nationalities include those from the Netherlands, South Africa and Australia. They suffered injuries ranging from minor to critical. The SACAA says the certificate of airworthiness of the aircraft was due to expire on the 15th of August 2018. A preliminary report into the aircraft crash is expected to be released in 30 days. Well, for more on this story, we are joined in studio by Advanced Life Support paramedic from Best Care Ambulance Services, Jean de Loupsier. Very good evening to you. I hope I said your surname right.
My surname was correct. My name is actually Zander.
Zander.
But I like
the
French accent, Zander.
Yes, welcome. Zander, so talk to me about this plane crash. What actually transpired on the scene? You were actually there as you know, those people that were the first respondents to the crash. Just paint a picture for us of what happened.
Well, first of all, I'm glad I didn't stop first. It was total chaos. We received the call, the stress of a plane crash. In the past, when we received such incidents, that you would imagine that it's only a dry run or a drill, just to check the preparedness of the emergency services in the specific area where the drill has been run. On arrival of the incident, at least there were services before us and a lot of community involvement as well, which has its benefits, but was constituted as a problem at a certain stage. There was an active fire, after the crash. People were, civilians were killing the fire with their feet, and there was patients scattered all over. I immediately called the stress on our internal channel to activate all our internal resources from Best Care side, because I realized that we are going to transport a lot of casualties from the incident.
And I understand that even helicopter services had to be used as well.
Definitely, one of our service providers, Halo Aviation, was immediately activated en route to the scene. And when I arrived on the scene, I gave them specific pin drop locations of the actual scene, and I said that they can activate heli. I spoke to other service paramedics on scene, and they confirmed that there's critical injured patients, which those patients would obviously have been flown from the scene. And at the end of the day, 3 people were airlifted. 2 of them were airlifted from the scene, where a 3rd person was airlifted from Montana to Mill Park after stabilization at the May 24 casualties.
Now let's talk about the crash victims. Some reports say there were 20 people on board. Some say there were 20 injuries. 1 was not on the plane. Some say 19 were on board. Can you give us a bit of a clarification on those figures?
I've read the news. A lot of news industries are claiming that at least 19 were injured, and that's obviously coming from the figure that was on board. There was a confirmed of 19 people on flight, from which 16 were actual passengers, and 3 of them were flight crew. The pilots, the 2 pilots and the flight engineer, who had passed away, unfortunately. The other 3 injuries or fatalities, depending on what it was people that were actually from the factory on floor or on the ground, and 1 person also from the public.
And in terms of fatalities, there was 1 fatality reported to have taken place at the crash site, and another one of a patient who was in hospital. Can you confirm that as well for us?
That is correct. 1 person already sustained fatal injuries on my arrival at the scene, from which a few were critical. 2 of the Australians, the pilot and his wife, both were in critical conditions, obviously sustaining head injuries, body fractures, etc. And the other fatality happened this morning in hospital.
And can you just give us a bit of information? I'm aware that there's an investigation underway, but from what you had seen, maybe what eyewitnesses had said, what was the seeming cause of the crash?
Definitely. Obviously, there's social media videos showing people actually capturing the patients being, the aircraft being, took off at Vonderboom Airport, and it already had smoke coming from the one wing. The patients themselves in the vehicle, in the aircraft, explained that they didn't hear any abnormal sounds or anything. They just saw the distress code or heard the distress code, and when they realized, then they're on the floor. crashing down. So yeah, coming from my experience being in a flight, there's always these procedures and stuff in place that you would follow once, the pilot would call distress, and they said that didn't happen. It was so fast, so yeah.
No time for that. Well, let's just go over to some of our additional guests here joining us via Skype. We're joined by ER24 spokesperson Russell Meyring, and over the phone line we are joined by Executive Aircraft Accident and Incident Investigator Peter Mashaba. Russell, let's just start off with you. Good evening to you, and thank you for joining us. From ER24's side, what were the extent of casualties that you guys experienced?
Well, as I said before, there was several casualties on. Several of them had sustained critical injuries and obviously were treated by the advanced life support paramedics on the scene. I believe that 3 of them were trapped inside of the aircraft and had to be extricated by the fire services on scene, obviously utilizing specialized rescue equipment.
Now, Russell, Zander just mentioned to us that it was a bit difficult to actually get to the crash site. Did you also experience those traffic difficulties where people are actually occupying those shoulder lanes in the road?
Absolutely. We have seen this accidents in and around South Africa where people will utilize the emergency lane, and obviously this can cause quite a bit of congestion and problems for all emergency services, whether it be from fire to paramedics to the local authorities getting to the scene. So this can always cause quite a bit of trouble. And our paramedics, and as well as several others, did have problems trying to get to the scene.
Well, thank you for that update, Russell. We cross over now to Peter Mashaba. Very good evening to you, Mr. Mashaba. Thank you for joining us. What details can you give us regarding the investigation process of a crash such as this one?
Good evening, ma'am. The details, I think what we can report on in terms of our investigation so far is that the team were able to confirm that the aircraft departed Vonnegut Airport, and with the engagement of the air traffic control base at Vonnegut Airport, they did indicate to us and made the submission to that effect that the aircraft was destined to arrive at Pilanesberg Airport. We subsequently engaged the maintenance organization responsible for the maintenance of the aircraft to find out what was the intent purpose of the flight. They did indicate to us that the flight was taken to conduct certain checks on the aircraft, and upon completion of such checks, the aircraft was to return to land again at Vonnegut Airport.
Mm-hmm. Now, when an aircraft, I think its air roadworthiness certificate was due to expire in August, how frequently should these aircrafts actually be checked, even though they are sort of airworthy?
Each and every aircraft is got the maintenance instructions issued by the manufacturer and also supplemented by additional maintenance requirements by the Civil Aviation Authority. Mm-hmm. Now, aircraft is subjected to periodic maintenance, and even in this specific aircraft that is in question, the aircraft was subjected to specific maintenance during the period of the validity of the C of A. Now, our investigation will also zoom into the maintenance requirements that was relevant and that was required to be performed on this specific aircraft, and to verify that indeed was those maintenance carried out on this specific aircraft.
And just lastly, Mr. Mashaba, how long will the investigation process actually take, and will we be getting updates as the investigation goes on?
Yes, the accident of this complex can take a while. But what we do in our investigation process, within 30 days, we will be releasing what we term the preliminary report. Subsequent to that, we aiming to complete the investigation within 12 months. Should we not be able to release the accident report in 12 months, we'll also release what we term the interim statement, which it will detail the investigation progress up to the point of 12 months from the date of occurrence.
Well, thank you very much to you, Mr. Peter Mashaba, just giving us some insight there into the investigation process. Now, lastly from you, Zander, just talk to us about the kind of training that you think paramedics should undergo, and also the public as well when we have accident situations, because oftentimes as soon as you see an accident, the first thing you think of doing as a member of the public is to take out your phone and start recording. That can also hinder the process of the emergency rescue services.
Definitely. Social media was actually used by close-by residents to activate the statements would, be vague. Please send some assistance, or please come and help. A plane has crashed close to my house. At the end of the day, like the spokesperson from ER24 mentioned, the scene was totally congested. Some of our paramedics had to walk for almost a kilometer just with equipment to gain access to the patients. At the end of the day, this was a good eye-opener just in terms of preparedness for the Tshwane paramedical and emergency services. And I think public education is definitely needed. We constantly speak about it. People shouldn't congest scenes. It is a plane that has fallen from the sky. At the end of the day, people would, that's natural instinct, would want to take pictures of that. But at the end of the day, they should just consider the patients in need of emergency medical care, and they should also consider the access of roads. We actually had an escort traffic police escort to hospital with our 5 emergency vehicles when we had left with 7 patients to Med24. So and that's additional arrangements that has to be made. So like I said, it's a great eye-opener for the emergency services to see where we do stand, and that was only 21 casualties, but the transported people at the end of the day were only 20, and that could have been double that, and it would have obviously put more strain on the emergency services.
And with regards to the person that actually passed on location, if emergency services were able to get to them sooner, could they have survived, or did the plane actually fall on them?
That depends on the injuries. The person who had passed away on scene was also entrapped, so he could have died on impact. That all depends on, or the conclusion will be made with post-mortem results and pathological investigations.
And lastly from you, Mr. Russell Mering, any closing comments?
Well, we just wish to thank all the emergency services that were on scene, especially with something like this. As Under said, it could have been a much larger and a lot more tragic if emergency services had taken longer to get there, with people blocking the emergency lane. So first of all the emergency services did a fantastic job on the scene, getting to all the patients and treating them and transporting them as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much to all of our guests for joining us this evening.